Hi, I'm Alvaro Henrique, and this is the lesson to Matteo Carcassi's study number 8 from his 25 melodic and progressive studies. Melodic. I want to highlight the name melodic, the adjective melodic in those studies, because it's about melody more than anything else. The video performed in this video is on the description, or it may appear on the screen somewhere. There is also a link for our guitar technical 1, intermediate 1 material that is used on the Escola de Música de Brasília, which has this piece as part of the student notebook. You can get access to this material by subscribing to that, to put your email to subscribe there, and then you will receive on your email automatically not only the student notebook but also some tips on how to play them. Okay, so this study has some mechanical issues on how to move the fingers, especially the legato. But it's a melodic study. We must talk about melody also. Let's start with the mechanical issues. It's pretty much about slurs. The ascending slurs and also the descending slurs that are present throughout the study. I consider the slur a note played by the left hand. The ascending slur, when you go to a higher note, you do pretty much the same movement that you do when you play, but without the right hand and a little bit faster, instead of just that's that movement. You may practice a little on the fingerboard, producing those notes to be more used to that movement. It's very important that you hit the string just a little to the left, to the fret. So little that it's hard to measure. As thin as one piece of hair. Okay. The descending slur, it's the same movement that you do on your right hand, but you're going to do with the left hand. And of course, in this region. But it's the same movement. Also practice this movement so you can get more used to that. On our student notebook on page 5, there are 2 studies also to prepare you for that slur. Instead of playing the study number 8 as written by Carcassi, first you do only the ascending slur. Then you do only the descending slur. Then you can do the ascending and the descending slur, which is in music, the right name to call that is mordente. Okay, nice. Now let's talk about melody. On the previous lesson about a saw study, which I'll also put the link on the description, I told a very long and interesting story about how the tonal system was created. And I begin with the fall of the Roman Empire until the beginning of the opera, but very fast and with an interesting story, I must say, so you can learn it easier. But I will not repeat that, but let's sum up some very important information that are there on this lesson about the saw study. First, on the tonal system, we have 3 main functions: the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant. A harmonic function is not the same as a chord. Remember, tonal system was made to create story, was to make stories, to use music to represent stories. And the tonic function is related to the good. And everything that's good, every character from this good side will be one chord from their tonic function. So there are several chords on the same function. The same from the dominant. Dominant is the evil, the villain. And anyone that is in the side of the evil will be considered a chord in a dominant function. Many chords, okay? Nice. So let's, because of that, the tonic represents relief, calm. Subdominant, medium tension, and dominant, the intense tension, okay? So let's check which chords and functions we have on that piece. We begin at the tonic, then to the subdominant, moderate tension, a little bit higher, then dominant, tension, strong. Then you relieve, calm to the tonic. And see that we began with the tonic, then the subdominant, moderate tension, and then the dominant, and then we're back to the tonic. When the composer begins a piece featuring all functions and then start in the tonic, this group of chords, which we also call a cadence, there is even a nickname for that cadence, which is the once upon a time cadenza. Why? Because very often it's not the case of that music, but it's important for you to learn this right now. So when the composer begins showing the main functions and then are back to the tonic, usually the music will begin on the second tonic chord, and this beginning is just to make the listener know a little bit where he or she is. It's like saying once upon a time in a story, and then the story really begins after you say once upon a time. Okay? Then we're back to the tonic, then the dominant of the dominant. It's the tension for the tension. So imagine that the good is Luke Skywalker. So the bad, the dominant, will be Darth Vader. But Darth Vader has an enemy himself, which is Palpatine. So Palpatine is the dominant of the dominant, the villain of the villain. So it's more intense. Then the dominant, a relative tonic right now. Anytime you see any chord be called a relative or an anti-relative, it's like being a vice. So the vice president is not exactly like the president, but it is as if he or she would be. So this relative, they is as if they were the same function, but not the same. So in our story, the tonic is Luke Skywalker. So the tonic relative would be like Leia. It's not exactly our main character, but it's her sister. They fight for the same thing. So she's the tonic relative. It's also a relief. It's also good, but not as released, not as calm, not as the tonic. When it's a dominant relative, it's also the same, but it's not that bad. It's not that intense, but it's also part of the dominant function. Okay, so we're back to the tonic relative. Dominant of the dominant, dominant, and when we repeat tonic, but when we go further, it's still the dominant, then the tonic, subdominant. There is a bass pedal, so it keeps the same note on the bass. Don't mind about that, okay? We'll talk about that later, or in harmony lessons. You can ask your harmony teacher what's a bass pedal, okay? Then we have this chord that it seemed at first the subdominant, later reveal being really the subdominant relative, but you only hear the notes that define it being a subdominant relative on the very end, so you can play just in moderate tension, it will work okay. Then the dominant, intense tension, tonic, release, calm, subdominant relative, dominant, tonic, dominant of the subdominant. Which kind of chord is that? In our story we have this main characters, but we also have other characters, and those characters may have their personal villain. For example, in our story we were telling, there is a character called Han Solo, and Han Solo has a villain, which is Jabba the Hutt. So Jabba the Hutt is the dominant of Han Solo. And what's Han Solo to look at? It doesn't matter. What matters right now is that there is one chord there and it has a villain, a dominant. And we present its dominant, dominant of the subdominant, and then the subdominant. So there is a little release. Then dominant with 6 and 4th, dominant and tonic. You may say, wow, but Alvaro, this chord that you said is a dominant 6th and 4th with 6 and 4th. It features the same notes as the tonic, as the D major. Why you're telling that this is a dominant chord? This is a common feature of the classicism. When you see these chords in different repertoire, in different contexts, you may consider a tonic just as you said. But in classical music, in music from the classicism, when you see this kind of chord, then a dominant and then a tonic, this won't be considered a tonic on the second inversion, but a dominant with 60th and 4th. This 60th and the 4th are preparing for the chord itself. So the 4th to the 3rd, the C sharp, and the 60th, the F sharp to the E. Does it make a difference? Yes, it does. In our story, there is a character called Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker represents the good. But there is also a Darth Vader, and Darth Vader is a villain. But Anakin and Darth Vader are the same person. Yes, they are. But when they represent the good, they are Anakin. And when they represent the bad, they are Darth Vader. It's the same. This chord has the same notes as the D major. It's a D major. It's the same chord as a tonic, but it doesn't represent relief. It represents tension, evil. So it won't be a tonic, because tonic is release. And it will be tension, will be evil, a dominant. So a dominant with 6th and 4th, then the dominant, and then the tonic. Okay, nice. Then let's go a little bit further. We have these repeated notes throughout the melody. Sorry, I played C natural, it's C sharp, sorry. When we have repeated notes in classical music, it's a very good place to do, and I recommend you to do that, to follow a trend, because those trends keep your listener more involved, especially because the listener can understand what's going on, the listener can predict where you're going to, but never when you're going to end. So you surprise him somehow or her somehow, while the listener keeps being able to predict what's going on. This is a very powerful moment, situation of creating emotion in music, according to Leonard Meyer, when the listener can actually predict what's going on next, but is not so sure, or things doesn't happen exactly as he or she predict. This trend can be any trend. What I did on the performance video was playing a little bit louder for every repetition. But it can be playing softer. It can be changing color. What matters is you have a starting point, an ending point, and you fill the gap on each note while playing. That's what's about this melody, mainly. But then you're going to understand, okay, so I have to, for example, make a crescendo. Then I have to play subdominant, but subdominant is moderate tension and tonic is release. How come the last notes from the tonic chord are stronger than the first notes from the subdominant chords? That's one of the powers from this study. Remember these graphics from stock market? If you see each dot individually, it seems chaotic. It seems that anything can happen. But if you look a little bit further, you can see there is a trend. You can see that the stocks are going up, the stocks are going down, or they are keeping the same value. Even that second after second, the movement seems chaotic and erratic. That's what's going on here. The harmony itself will represent the trends, but these repetitions will represent these little dots. So it will happen. You will have the last notes of a tonic chord being stronger than the first note of a subdominant or a dominant chord just after it. But that's okay if you keep in mind to mix all this individual note direction to keep this trend going, and at the same time the trend that the harmony is showing you. This is what this study is about, and that's how you can that's what you can learn from this study to apply in melodies throughout the repertoire. Have fun, nice studies.